Hi everyone, this is the second session that I'm doing with the Forefront residency. And in this session, we're gonna go into details about this project that I'm working on. I started working on this way before Forefront, but it's been kind of my a very passionate project of mine. And since um, since it's a multi kind of dimensional project with different aspects of elements, I've decided to just combining this project with the artistic project with the artist residency that Forefront is hosting. And so today we're gonna do a deep dive of what this project is, how did the idea come through, and how did I end up combining the vision of this project into what I personally am more comfortable and confident in working on. So yeah, this will be the story of that project. So the project name is called Agartha. So how the name came in mind, it was a really funny story. It kind of came to me in a dream where I was on this soul searching journey in Hawaii and going to nature every other week. And I was really into dream reading at the time. You know, I've been a huge fan of Carl Jung for a while. And then I met this person in Hawaii that kind of is an expert in dream reading, and he did a free dream reading for me, and then it was like super accurate, kind of just inspired me a little bit. And then he told me that everybody will be their own best dream reader, and your dream is kind of like how your consciousness is communicating with you. It's through your dream. um, so if you can tune into it, you can actually get a lot of really great insights from the dream. So around that time, I really started to practice my own dream reading. I like wake up every day, and first thing I do is write down my dream in a journal, even though a lot of times it's like just babbling stuff. And it was also during a time that I was kind of creatively confused. I didn't know what I should focus my energy on creatively next. And I've been having these like really like seemingly random bizarre dreams that I documented, and then a week or 2 week later I would re-look at that dream and be like, oh my god, like that's what I needed to hear. And then all of those really kind of helped me in the way of discovering more of an authentic creative flow. And the name Agartha came into the dream when I was kind of in the dream. I was just like exploring all these ancient caves of these ancient people, like maybe they were like on Earth before like our race was here. And then they was just there was this really strong, like fearless warrior type. And he was like surfing through a wooden plank, and then like through different really dangerous caves. And then I heard this voice that was saying like, this warrior is the strongest, he's the fearless, he is the Agartha. And then I just woke up, and then woke up, was like, what is Agartha, like what is it? So I did a bit of an internet search, and Agartha is actually like an actual but kind of mystical kingdom that exists inside of Earth. There's a whole like conspiracy theory about it, but there's also kind of like more ancient fairy tales about this Agartha kingdom. Some people believe it actually exists inside the earth. Some people believe it's more of a mythical kind of narrative. But anyway, I just kind of fell in love with the name. I'm not gonna try to state whether I believe that this exists or not. But if you're curious about like the idea of this beautiful kingdom inside the earth, you can go down the rabbit hole with this name. And one interesting story that about Agartha was that like there was this general that took down an expedition in World War II into the South Pole, and then wrote this journal on how he discovered Agartha inside under the South Pole, where he met these very technologically advanced aliens that lived in a perfect kind of jungle paradise that brought with him this one message, was saying like there can be prosperity on earth, and there can be beauty on earth if all the countries just stop their nuclear weapons against each other. And once that happened, like we will like go to like the stage of prosperity and peace. So in the end, like a lot of people say that guy is totally crazy, and the story is like very like crazy, like are you kidding me, there's alien inside earth. But regardless of whether the story is legit or not, I do think that the message of Agartha is very beautiful. It's basically just preaching, hey, like, what if we just put on our weapon and then start building trees together? So that's why the name really resonated with me, and then I've decided to use this for this project that we're building, and that's where the origin of the name. Okay, I didn't take too much time explaining that. That's great. And so the project idea really came to existence during Mars College, which is kind of a desert co-living, co-working experiment that we did. And at Mars College, there was a really great friend of mine who was kind of like the co-founder of Agartha, but he's right now kind of just really busy with his day-to-day work. So our collaboration has been more sparse, but he was the person that proposed and made a presentation about eco-village as an alternative way of living. But basically, like, you know, we live in urban centers where things are very unsustainable, and then, you know, like, we consume more than we regenerate to the environment. But then if you look at eco-villages and how village life have been operating for decades, centuries, that people living in eco-villages usually have a lot more intimate relationship with the land, intimate relationship with each other, where eco-village life, it's like a lot less segregated, a lot more communal, and also it's a lot more budget friendly, where, like, you know, you produce your own things, you're not, like, you don't have to worry about paying expensive rent at urban centers. And also people, you know, like, usually grow food in a more local scale, so that you're not really destroying the environment as you're growing the crop. You're actually regenerating the environment. So he made this whole presentation. I was like, oh my God, this is a beautiful idea. Like, I want to collaborate on this. And then we started the study group. That was the early kind of version of Agartha, where at Mars College we'll meet once a week, and we'll talk about just eco villages and eco living, and, you know, like, different aspects of eco living. What's the budget like? What's the financial model? What's the governance? What are some of the existing, like, precedents of successful eco livings? What's the ideal that everyone wants to live? And then there's all these really interesting discussions. Some people thinking that, oh, maybe it's better for everyone to be a nomad. You know, maybe if we can provide infrastructure at different spots of the earth, people can come and go, and then in that way you're not stagnant and you're not having drama and love issues with everyone. While other people believed that, well, like, maybe we should have a very, like, kind of hone in together eco village where people constantly meet each other, but we should come up with ways to mitigate these drama, these like, conflict. And then there's all these methods, you know, like non-violent communication that people use to mitigate conflicts within, like, collective living. So we started collecting a lot of really great ideas from that study group. And then in the end, we're like, okay, like, our mission is kind of to make eco-villages just a thing, right? Like, we want to, like, just advocate eco-villages. If a lot of people can just live in eco-villages, people will be really happy. People really, you know, like, will be free. And then, you know, there was all these ideas that we were trying to portray. And that's why we started the project Agartha. And this is kind of the first version of Agartha. After that, it's come and go and has become in, like, many things, and has had a lot of different contributors and different ideas. So now I'm just, like, kind of taking you guys through this timeline of Agartha, like, where it came from and then how it's been transformed. So gonna get into the slides. Societal problems. So, like, what really inspired us first was all these societal problems that we saw and disagreed with. You know, like, I grew up in big cities in China. I've lived in LA and New York for the past 7-8 years. I've, like, never really, like, had the experience of growing up in a little town with the people you know. And especially coming from China to live in the US as an immigrant, you really see how, like, a lot of times, like, these cities are still highly segregated for people that came with, you know, like, certain language barrier or culture barrier or financial barrier. It's really hard for them to integrate with people that are slightly different. And also what I've noticed is that a lot of people live in the city are very, very isolated. People actually crave for community. People crave for friend groups. If you happen to have, like, a group of friends that you love in a city, then yeah, that's great. That's great for you. But a lot of people that I've interacted with are don't really are like on the search for a community in the city. Once they find a community, it's like everything changes for their life. That sort of things happened to me too, where when I moved to a new city, I'm like, I don't know anyone in this city. Like, how do I like get around? I didn't grow up here. I don't have school here. Like, I just moved here. Who do I meet? Who do I talk to? And I go say hi to my neighbor, and my neighbor's like, "Are you crazy? What do you want from me? Why are you saying hi to me?" But anyways, I think it's a common, maybe it's a more than frequent thing for us to live in cities, in these like central hubs where we actually don't have a solid community we can engage with. And that's just one of the problems that we've observed. There's all these other problems, such as like environmental crisis, which is something that we don't have to overstate. Like cities are they're built on kind of outdated infrastructure, but the infrastructure is so complex and they already are set up, and it's really hard to make any changes to it. For example, like all of our waste, human waste, human waste, food waste, like chemical waste, and just all gets flooded to one place, and then we just like incinerate it, and then generates like a ton of more waste by processing these waste and using a ton of electricity. Where like in actuality, if you just redesign the mechanism, all these waste can be designed into waste that's actually helping to the environment instead of the other way around. But that's not how we operate in most of the cities, at least in the US and maybe some countries. And another problem that we saw is lack of resilience against systematic collapse. So as we see what happened with COVID, it's just like once there's any sort of global pandemic or any global disaster, then grocery shop is going to run out of food, and people are panicking, and jobs are being lost, and people are dying, people are suffering, and it's just really really scary to realize how interconnected we are. Like something that's happening in China or Russia could severely affect the lives of people in the US and vice versa, because we're in this very like interconnected global trade network. It's like a lot of times we kind of gave up our sovereignty and our ability to support ourselves by like doing things such as sourcing our own energy and sourcing our water locally, and sourcing our food and growing our food locally. And because all these takes a lot of effort, and it's just so much easier to go to a grocery shop and then like swipe your card and then buy all these things. And one of the things that I kept saying that's absolutely insane is just like in the US, people import water from Fiji. I'm like, water is everywhere. You like, why do we ship all these water on a boat from a place to another place, package it in plastic wraps so that people can drink higher quality water? Like, why can we not have water from like our like natural spring that's right next to us? But anyways, these are just like some of the things that we like kind of collectively saw and agreed as unsustainable and as problems that can be improved. And alongside with like the food that's healthy or decent, it's really like unreasonably overpriced, and unhealthy food is really cheap and accessible, so that people's health are affected by this food. And also living in cities, like if you're not lucky enough to already own a place or have heritage from families that have places in these city centers, you're like basically paying your rent your whole life, and then that takes like a significant chunk of your salary. And then aside from that, you need all the rest of the money for leisure, for activities, and then end up having close to no savings, and also feeling stressed about your job. You cannot lose it. Once you lose it, you won't be able to have a place to live. All these things are just like, these problems are very interconnected. And the way we were looking at it is just like, okay, like you can't like solve one problem without solving the other and then solving the next. And what are some of the things that we can do to kind of address these problems kind of all at once? And this is a quote that I've seen almost like comically often at all these regenerative projects. It's a quote from Buckminster Fuller, where I think the original quote is that we don't aim to destroy the existing civilization. What we can do is build a new civilization that's a lot better, and then render the existing one obsolete. So then what we thought is like, okay, like what if we have a blank slate, like just white paper, so you can design a new type of civilization or city or a community. what are some of the things that you need to look into? And then we realized this is a high dimensional space. There's actually so many things you need to think about, like the location, the climate, degree of suffering, and also like how big is the community, and how and what are the day-to-day lives of members that live in these communities, and like maybe the people's religious beliefs and people's activity beliefs, like how can we bring a bunch of people that don't really live the same lifestyle together and just be like, hey, here, this is gonna solve all your problems. So it really, like, we really started thinking about, like, okay, this is kind of a really ambitious and big approach, and how do we like start to cut it into pieces and start to digest it slowly. And also the needs of the community have like all these different aspects. One of the biggest ones, like, where are you going to get the capital, where are you going to find the land, how are you going to find people that know how to build structures that's regenerative and eco-friendly, and and available are these people going to be? Maybe they already have a job, maybe the people that know how to build eco communities already live in an eco community they've built. So what's going to incentivize them to come to your place and then be like, build your community for 5 years? Like, is it just you're going to pay them, or if you pay them, then where's the money come from? It's all these questions kind of started to emerge and has just been flying around our heads for a few months, I would say. And the most important part is like, how's the community gonna be governed? And the challenge of try to implement top-down governance for our community before even knowing people or community, it's like a comical meme that's been around for centuries. Like, if we say we want to build a place that's like more healthier and more wholesome for people to live, like, how can we just like suggest a governance structure that allows people to govern themselves, instead of like the original founders be like, hey, this is the governance structure, you guys follow this model, and then that's it? Because that has not worked out super well in past communities. And so we just, after thinking about all these problems, we had this idea for an approach where, like, this is a meme that we were really proud of making at the time, where like the progress of thinking about building better societies can progress from thinking broken societal problems can be fixed by angry tweets, to people that went to Burning Man and just got addicted to glamping, to people that, okay, now decide to work at nonprofit, recycles religiously, be involved with local governance and advocate veganism, to the next stage of people living completely off-grid, being self-sustainable in a creative community, to, like, I'm not gonna read the follow, but in the end, it's just like the end master goal is to create a platform of value-aligned community and governance to virtually playtest and subsequently actualize decentralized societies tailored to the needs of members, then document outcomes. Anyways, like, and I think the current mission of Agartha has slightly digressed from that, but we're just like super proud of this meme at the time. And so these are kind of, at the time we realized, okay, like, if we want to build a community, maybe we can build a virtual community first before we actually turn this to a physical kind of iteration. We can like build virtual communities and also go visit a lot of eco villages, and that's what we've been doing for the past few months. So we've decided to, like right now we don't have anything. Like, we have an ideal, and then ideals kind of like just grow on trees. It's so often for people to have an idea. How do you actually step by step turn this idea into a reality? What are some of the things you can do? Well, we thought of, well, like, maybe the first step is just we can have a Discord server for people to come out and like talk about ideas, and then other than that, we can kind of start researching about eco-villages and communities, and see what are the successful eco-villages out there that people want to visit and people say great things about it, and how do they govern themselves, how do they get their money, and how do they like choose their land, how regenerative are they actually self-reliant, do they actually just grow like all their food, or do they still rely on going around and shopping for food, and what's their vibe like? What kind of activities do they do? Is it just a bunch of people growing food all the time, or do they have like other things? But anyways, we realized that before we actually get to the place where we can maybe build a village as a playtest, or maybe we can accumulate funds to give to other villages to enable and uplift them, or we can create needs and incentives for people that don't live in villages to migrate to villages and try out how village life is like. Like before we get to all of that, maybe the immediate things that we can do is just like building connections and creating education materials. So that's kind of what the original idea of what Agartha is, and that was, I think, earlier this year. So it's already been 6-7 months since we've had this presentation, this summary of what we wanted to build. And I'm gonna reshare my screen to navigate to another tab to show you guys about the things that we built throughout this time. So we do have a Discord server, and we've actually been organically just growing the server. I think right now we have like 60-70 people, which is not a lot, but still it's a steady growth. And we thought about doing some sort of like marketing campaign to really advertise this idea to people, but at the same time we want people who are like the most dedicated to being the server. So we don't really want people that's there not for the reason of interested in living and building eco villages. And okay, I was just reading the chat. All good. If anyone has any questions, feel free to just jump on stage and interrupt me at all time. I will be more than happy to answer that. But so we've been growing the Discord. We've been having a consistent weekly meeting with Agartha members. A lot of them are, and then it's just been kind of a really wild and fun time to meet these people, because some of them are actually building solar punk structures. We have members in our community that like hooked up a solar panel with like a little hexagon pod in like the middle of the desert so that they can live in a more like sustainable way. We have community that's thinking about buying land and then growing their own food forest. We have communities that's like already living in eco villages and are exploring other eco villages. And I've been traveling around the US for the past 3-4 months, just first to check out places, different terrains and different environments in America, and to see like potentially where, okay, if we do want to build a village for Agartha, where should this be? And also visiting eco villages on my way to kind of see how they govern. And I'd love to share more of my experience about these eco villages, maybe in another stream or maybe later when we have more time. Yeah, so aside from the Discord, we've also been building up our Notion page, which is right now is just still, I see this as a knowledge dump where like everyone that have recommendations on like things related to eco living and eco village, we could just kind of put them here. And but still I think it's a place that has been curating some really interesting projects. So if you go to the research page, you'll see all the links basically we've been putting together. Let me actually reshare my screen to the Chrome tab so that I can come in between. Okay, so if you go to the research page, you'll see that like there's all these different communities we've been looking at. There's this page called Civilization Kickstarter. So in here you'll see all these like projects that's trying to build a new type of civilization. One of my favorite is it Next Gen Village? Yeah, so I actually got in touch with the founder of this project, and what they're working on is an absolutely really amazing, really beautiful initiative in Switzerland. They're prototyping a society of tomorrow, and they are building an entire village with principle of regenerating the earth, and also with the principle of decentralized governance. So I think their website is not as updated as they could be, but I've seen the slides that the founders have shown me, and what the plan they have is like absolutely beautiful. They have all these areas that they're planning to build, where like very in detail, how does the energy work, how does water flow work, how does waste recycle work, and all of their design principle has like these eco-friendly ideal attached to it. And then they have places dedicated for art, they have places dedicated for spiritual development, and places dedicated for technical innovation. And I think they are running themselves as a nonprofit, and what they're building right now is building a digital version, like a digital twin of this village before they actually put down work on the physical realm. And being learning about projects like this one among like many other really cool projects has just been really inspiring for us, where like we didn't know when we came up with a presentation for Agartha that all these things exist. There's actually so many people that's trying to do the exact same thing. And once we found out that there's all these projects, it kind of, like we felt really inspired by how they operate, and then the challenges, and then the challenges that they're facing. And also like maybe some of them got disillusioned a bit, where when we first heard about this concept, we're like, yeah, eco living, that's like all you need. And then realized that there are communities that live in a eco-friendly environment, but people in that community still don't really seem to feel super fulfilled or super happy about their living situation. They actually, still have, there's all these different pros and cons of eco living. I think these are one of these are explained in this article called Why Utopian Communities Fall, which is kind of really inspiring for me to read. And it's a pretty long article, but it's this person that wrote about the utopian communities they visited in all these places, right? From Auroville in India to Feinhorn in, I think, like Norway or something like that. There's all these beautiful artistic utopian communities where people have decided to move away from city center and build their village. And, we've realized that we did not come up with this concept. This concept existed actually for a really long time, and a lot of them are succeeding and are operating really well, and a lot of them are actually not. And then what we realized is that a lot of people that operate in these communities sort of are just completely disconnected with the world outside, where like you move to this place, there's like a 50 to 100 people here, and then these are the people that you see every day. And then people move here also with the intention of like just hating on the rest of the capitalist society, where they think that society is not working out well, like money is a scam, and there's all these things that people kind of just like like these ideals attracted a certain very particular type of people. Hi. And that's why like because it attracted these really particular group of ambitious but also like really radical people that's very anti-existing society in a way. That's why a lot of times these village groups have also been highly segregated. And once segregation happened, a really interesting phenomena happened. And the name of that is cult. So like it's very easy if you live in a community with like 10-20 people, right? And then you guys are just like each other's friends forever, and then you have this common zealous like shared passion of how much you dislike the rest of the world, and you're like, okay, we're building a paradise here and the rest of the world sucks, but we have this paradise. And then that sometimes fuel into certain egoistic personalities, where like maybe one person who's really good at building paradise just started to have this charisma around them, and then that started to cause communities to behave in some sort of like cult-alike like behaviors, and that's when actually a lot of these eco communities, even though they're like completely regenerative, they're super green, they're like doing all these things that's really great, but because of that factor, because of the cultural segregation with the rest of the world and the refusal of being still connected with the rest of the world, is actually causing this community to slightly going on to like the culty side of things. And that's actually like a really amazing realization that we've had from reading about these communities and learning about people that lived in those places. These are like just some of the things that we've been researching alongside with like all the other aspects, from the aspects of like the building side of community, how do you construct it, and from the aspect of governance, and from all these amazing resources that people put together about farms and regenerative agriculture and all these innovation in the world of farming, where like actually right now if you want to farm your own home garden, it's so much easier than 5 years ago, because there's all these amazing resources you can find online, and about soil health, about water needs, about types of crops that can help to regenerative your farm in a much easier way. And there's also even where is FarmBot? There's also even robots that you can buy to build your village that like completely kind of calculate the amount of needs the amount of needs you have into building a village. And there's actually, I think I was just told this by a member from Agartha, that there are eco villages that are already starting to implement technologies like this, where you can kind of draw out the farm bot, draw out like the farm that you're planning to have, and then use this robot to actually build it, maintain it, and also just like study and control it. So things like this is absolutely, really insane to learn about. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. There's like all these new technology in regards to transportation. But this is also something I've learned from someone that's starting a similar project of building, like what they're trying to do is building a Burning Man type of eco village, where like there's these personal flight that personal like drones that you can drive. That's really easy to learn. It's almost like, I think I've heard it takes anyone 20 minutes to learn, and you don't need a license. You can just start driving it, and it's completely electric, so you can charge it with solar panel. But then you can use this to just get around your village. And then when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is absolutely insane. So there's so many technology that's innovating in this front, and which is really mind-blowing to actually learn them. And Agartha right now is just aiming to put them together into this wiki and like kind of massive library of these knowledge that can be really useful for building villages. And all of these is just like a tiny incremental step for us to bring us closer to the eventual goal of actually building the village. And okay, and I want to take a pause here to see if there's any questions. Hide here. Yeah, okay, cool. Looking at some of I've often wondered how many of these people living off the grid really link to the tech. Do you find the ones that are working more successfully are more tech-oriented, as in embracing technology, or ones that are structured in a more simplified manner, perhaps less data-heavy, are doing? Well, I think that's a really great question. Thank you, Blockchain Lugano. But basically, from what we learned, definitely the village that's operating in a really successful way, I wouldn't say they're like all high-tech village, but they are very open to innovation. They're open to like still being connected with the capitalist society. Well, like also you can kind of define what defines working and what defines not, right? There's some eco villages that's just tarps and tents, and then but people have a great life. People love living there. People don't need walls. They love living in tents, and then they have like some basic solar panel set up, and then maybe they grow food, and that's just happens to be enough for them, and then that's fine. It works for them. Like can we just say, oh, that's unsuccessful because I don't want to live in tents? But like in my opinion, like as long as you're not dying, or as long as you're not really doing some like hard drugs, people live in the way they want to live in, right? But the villages that I've seen that are doing like really well in a way that people want to stay, and in a way that people like, there's like generational development into the village and it's growing in size, are the ones that usually, I wouldn't say they're the most high tech, but they usually have a really solid governance structure, and they usually have a very solid financial model. So they are making money, so that people are not like, it's not like if you don't farm enough crop this year, your children's gonna starve to death, because that's like society going backwards, But the ones that's doing really well, I still haven't yet to put all of them in one box and be like, hey, these are 20 villages that's doing really well. But the ones that I've observed have these commonalities where they have a very solid governance structure. They know how we rule ourselves. They know, and it's usually not a dictatorship. It's usually some sort of decentralized governance model where like maybe the head of the village rotates every 6 months or a year, so that no one's in charge of the. Most things are done in a voluntary voluntary basis. So if someone like volunteers to grow food, then yeah, they will have more food. If someone volunteers to fix things, then things will get fixed. But if they happen to not have volunteer for that particular task, it will just not get done. and then the ones that are successful are just the ones that have a really great culture that attracts very like doer mentality, they're like innovative people to be there and then want to volunteer to fix things. And I feel like science has more pros boundaries, less ideal. Yeah, uh, Nate is saying science has a more, doesn't mean like scientific people, I guess. Has more pros boundaries. Sorry, I'm like trying to read this, and less ideologically rigid. Yeah, that's actually a discussion I've had with people from, it's genius of a group. Oh, Science, like science genius. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so this is a, I've actually had this discussion with the founder of Future Thinkers, which is also, I can just share my screen real quick, which is also a really cool project doing kind of like exactly what we want to do, but that they are this project. They've been around for a long time. They actually have land in Canada, and then they're building this regenerative village with like with and then they also do a podcast about they've interviewed people who have like been doing really extensive research on like this alternative civilization idea, like regenerative living, building villages and communities. So they're like, I would consider them as an expert in this field. And I had a really pleasant conversation with the founders of Future Thinkers, where they were talking about like like a lot of eco villages kind of don't have this protect mentality, and what you will find with people with this protect mentality is that they're usually a lot more more rational than your regular eco village creators. So like as we discussed in the last stream, there's like the two side of the spectrum. There's people that's very pro spirituality, where they're like, yeah, like if everyone in this entire world started meditating every day and thinking about world peace, we would like we'll end war and hunger. And then in a way, I think these are really beautiful ideal. And then like I definitely feel like I am also on my personal spiritual journey to like like to elevate in this field. But there's the dark side of like the over spiritualized community, is that they will start to kind of operate in this anti-science mentality, where they're like, oh, like why do you need to like prove things working? You just like know it's working, or you just feel that it's working, then it's working. And the scientific community are usually the opposite of that, and just like feels like things that needs to be proven and needs to be done with solid research and data. And a lot of times, as we've seen, the scientific community actually progress a lot more because they actually have products that are proven that's working. So I think it's rare to have villages that adopt to these two mentalities, but the ones that do usually have a higher chance of success as well, because they're not just like, as we mentioned before, like if you live in a really segregated place and you're like away from the rest of the world, and then you also start to believe in your own spirituality a bit too much, then you can start to have all these like assumptions, be like, oh, one day you can be like, I can fly, and then the second day is like, oh, I don't need these nutrients, I can just like survive, like, and then you think that God is always here with me. Anyways, I don't want to be too skeptical about this, but each side has something valuable, but the danger in lack of thoughtful balance, extremism, or dogma. That's very well said. I completely agree. I guess so we had some of deep dive into what the work Agartha has been doing. Even though this research is just one element of the whole projects, we have actually a lot more content to share, and all of these are just like my mind maps here and there. And I think we can also showcase the Agartha aesthetic, where like I've been putting together a mood board of what kind of civilization we want to create. And I think there's like 7 different mood boards, so like bear with me, this is just one of them. How do I open this original? Yeah, but basically the project has been growing for a while, and because it's more a passion project, so we're really not thinking about launching a company or getting invested. even though at some point maybe that will be necessary for us to really pick up momentum. But as of right now, this is just all voluntary work, just of people being interested in things and putting things together. And so these are some of the vibe picture I've been putting together from people that are building futuristic cities to the ancient like Adobe cities, and then see how we can maybe create a place that adapt to both kind of aesthetics. And also, I think in the future sessions, I will do more of a dive into like the aesthetic of what we're working on right now. So now we still have a bit of time, so I would like to walk through on like where are we at right now with this project. Let's see. So okay, so I made this master plan graph yesterday, where like we call it the glorious road to the Agartha village. It's very glorious. Right now, let's say if this is where we are and this is where we want to be, which is the place where we can build the physical village, like what do we need to do to get there? You know, there's like many of different ways to get there, but what are some of the things that we can do to actually progress and then step by step and get to the place where we can build the physical village? Well, we'll see. Once to build the physical village, not only you have to have land, which comes with money, and maybe you can partner with people that have land that are willing to let you build this vision, but also like you need to have a plan on what the village would look like, how is it gonna operate, who's gonna live there, who's gonna build it, and all these things. Still, it's gonna take a long time to research. And as of right now, our plan for the Agartha village is that instead of just having it be a permanent village, we want to turn it into a regenerative creative institute, where, you know, like if you mix match a bunch of people, I think I have a better graph here. So if you create a community of it's actually this graph. So if you have a community of these diverse backgrounds, you have engineers, artists, researchers, farmers, you have residents, and you have investors, and then you create a kind of a value platform for them to give whatever they can to the community and then take out whatever they want to take out. So you can have investors where there are people with abundance of capital. They can be like, hey, I want to invest in this, and then they can get shares or whatever. But then you can also have residents that can be like, I'm a resident, I want to just live here. I have a full-time job somewhere else, but I want to live in a beautiful place. I want to observe regenerative culture. They can, you know, they can rent to live here. But then we can have people, you know, that don't necessarily have the money, and people want to work on regenerative projects, and we can have them to come here and work on the project that they love, with the principle of, you know, regeneration of the earth or of humanity as like the guiding principle, but then create this kind of a value sharing or skill sharing, educational content sharing residency program. So like the idea is that maybe like every 1 month or every 3 months, we have a different batch of people coming here from all over the world, where they can have expertise in engineering, in art, in research, or maybe they're just experienced farmers. They come here and then they create projects that aim to be innovative projects that can make the village better. So maybe someone can come and be like, hey, I'm an expert in aquaponics. I've been growing my aquaponics farm for a while. I propose to grow aquaponics farm for Agartha, and then maybe they can even get paid from the Agartha village, and then they can also get to stay here for free and then eat and hang. Artists can come and be like, I want to build this crazy structure and I want it to look really, really nice. And the structure is also going to be built with like certain recycled or organic material. And then they can also, you know, be supported and come here and build that and just live at the land. But basically the idea is that, you know, this place can be an R&D lab, and it can be a creative art incubator where all these people come and contribute different values. But the question is, how do we get there? How do we get there? Right now, we're just an online internet group with like 60 people. And every time during our weekly call, we have like 5-6 people just hopping online talking about farming. Like, we're really small. How are we going to get there? And I've been thinking about this question actually for months now, and I've had different revelations and different ideas. And going like going back to what we were talking about in the last session, I think people operate the best when you're matching your strengths to the stuff that you want to do for a reason that's not just gonna bring you to yourself, but bring abundance and joy to the rest of the world. So I think Agartha is all of those things, and the only missing part is, for me personally, what are some of the things that I'm good at, and what are some of the things that I'm not. So we thought about like maybe before that we can turn Agartha into a blog where we just, because we've been researching on all these materials and then, reading about all these different different villages and then like visiting these different eco villages, maybe these are great insights that we can turn into a blog. And then I thought about doing that, and then I found out about this blog called Tree Hugger, and it's a really, really beautiful blog with like a very spearhead focus on sustainability, where they have news article about the environment, pollution, climate crisis, and home gardening, how are you gonna grow trees, grow plants, and then the science of sustainability, the policy of sustainability, principles of eco design, and then like feeding animals and all that stuff. And then I saw this, I was like, okay, maybe what we can do is grow an Agartha into a project that's like this, but for eco villages, focusing on eco villages, but as a blog. And then I had that thought for 2 days, and then at some point I just started to really feel stressed because I personally am not the best writer, and I'm not the best at running a blog. I'm not the best at, I don't know, like organizing something like this or social media or posting. Like none of those are my strength. And I've realized, to going back to the idea of ikigai, where you need to find like you thrive the best when you're working on what you love and also for a purpose that you really love. So then I regrouped for a bit, and I thought about, okay, what are some of the things that I'm really good at and I feel passionate working on, and maybe instead of going to the village in that way, we can go through this in some other way. And then I started to go back to the notes that we've been taking and the ideas that we've been tossing here. And look, at some point, like I was making this mock-up for the Agartha blog, and I was like, yeah, maybe we just like turn this into a blog and start posting articles and blah blah blah. But just the thought of that stressed me out, because I don't think I will have the best enjoyment working on that. It will feel more like a work responsibility than something that I personally would really have a lot of joy and pleasure in building. And I went back and I thought about, okay, what are some of the things that I would love to build, like personally, for fun? And then it really went back to, what my profession is, which is building games and interactions. And then I thought about it, okay, like there's actually like a alignment here, that games, interactions, what I see them is really, they're the blueprint of life, right? Like people play Sim Cities, people play Civilization, people play what do you call, like Skyrim, or people play like any of these games because they want to, like there's actually a lot of things about these games that can reflect about life, and but in a way that we don't really have all the lifetime to experience Skyrim or to experience Civilization or to experience any of these like full-on games, but we can kind of just play this game for like 10, 20, even 50, 100 hours and get a lot of it. So the way I've always seen game, they're like this blueprint for life. They're also just like a very short abstracted version of what life can be. But I know a lot of video games are designed for like for people to be really addicted to things. I don't really want to build anything like that. But then as I was thinking about like what's the difference between like between interactive games that's just fun and casual, and the interactive games that you can actually learn things from. And I actually think that there's so much to look into the games that people can learn things from. And that's kind of what inspired me to start pursuing this whole career of digital art creation, digital art asset. It was because I took a year off in college and I started playing a lot of strategic management games from like Civilization and City Skyline. And then I just had so much fun playing Civilization, like like managing an empire, like looking at your resources, learning the technological tree, and see how every technology is created because of technology created before. It felt like actually a really educational process. And so I had this idea, okay, like what if we can build the Agartha village, but as a virtual one first, and then turn that into some sort of a game that people can play. And as you play this game, you kind of understand what it is. You're like, oh, I see, it's a, and also I see it's like built in a regenerative way, and oh, and that there's all these like different fundamental aspects of living, and kind of like without having to take a train, drive a car, or book a ticket to actually visit a regenerative village. You can actually be introduced with the idea in a really fun and interactive way, where you can like just sit in front of a computer and then look at your phone and be like, okay, this is how it works, and it's actually really easy and intuitive. And through this way, we can also start to grow like a presence, or just grow some sort of like send some sort of message to the world, be like, hey, this is what we're building. So this is where Agartha is right now, where I think the personal focus is going to shift from from running like a media organization to Agartha village, to running a virtual village and creating this virtual village, and then make it like really interactive and fun, and then use this as an inspiration for the actual village, and also use this use this offer this virtual village as a tool and a gift to people that are interested in regenerative living, and then use this as an educational gateway for people to realize that this exists. And then once building virtual village is something that I can just like get started on today, like I don't really need to have people investing a crazy amount of money, or I don't have, I can just have a prototype in like a month, which is exactly what I'm trying to do with Forefront. And then we can use this, we can leverage we can leverage with this tool to really advocate what we actually want to build with the physical village. So as of right now, this is kind of the plan for as Agartha's glorious way to the actual physical village. And I want to show just a little bit of some of the graphs that we've been working on with this virtual village. So we'll do another deep dive of like regenerative ecosystem in one of the sessions, which will be really fun. We'll go into how Earthship came up with their design, and how some of these other problem solutions are dealing with in terms of recycling water, recycling energy, not recycling energy, recycling water, recycling waste, and also repurposing these what we call conventional waste into things that's useful. So a really good example is that water source, like water is something that we have hugely abundance of, exist in the atmosphere, it exists in the rain. And then each like basically a general rule of thumb of creating regenerative village is that you have to source your rainwater or get water from well. Like if you don't gather the water that's in the atmosphere, you're basically wasting all these great resources that can be used in many ways. And then as water is gathered, it goes through a filter, it gets used in kitchen and shower, and then after that the gray water can actually be great resources. Well, like assuming that all the waste is organic waste, that you're not using chemical or like synthetic and like detergents, but all the gray water can be great fertilizer for garden and filter. So one of the principles that Earthship used to design is that they use actually just gray water from shower and cooking to grow banana trees, and then the banana tree is just fine because like what humans consider as waste is actually food for the plants. And then the garden adds beautiful vibes to your environment, and also generates moisture to the atmosphere, and then creates this really beautiful ecosystem feedback loop. So this is something that once I've realized this is how it works, I was like, okay, this can be very easily kind of explained in a video game, right? Like you have like a physical container somewhere, and then you can have like X amount of water being collected every month, and then this X amount of water, the amount of water you need shower and kitchen, and amount of water you can give to the garden filter, and then vice versa. And then just do like incorporate realistic data and statistics to this village plan, so that people can actually use this to understand how this ecosystem works, which really has been like kind of complicated, overcomplicated, but in general, in concept, it should be fairly simple once we have it laid out on the map. So these are some of the things that will go into the village game prototype, although I don't think I will have all the time to make all of these within this residency, but I think what we can do with this residency is at least make like a tiny prototype, like the food cycle, from food to waste to compost, and use the compost to support home garden, and use the home garden to grow food, and then vice versa, and see how the system works. So I use one of these as an example, and to build this virtual village. And so that's the idea of what we would like to work on for the next few weeks. So next 2 weeks, I'm gonna do a technical deep dive into what it's like to create a video game from scratch, and what are the softwares that you use, how do you navigate around them, how do you solve problems when problems emerge, because it happens all the time, things break. And and so that's what's gonna happen for the next 2 weeks. Tune in if you are interested. Gonna read Space Exponential says that they're a tree hugger. Me too. I love to hug trees. And I can see how a lot of useful data will come to the project as well, apart from pulling participants. Definitely. So a lot of these data actually already exist, and what we're trying to do is just actually accumulate in place, and then this data gathering process can also be operating like a DAO. If we create a custom token, and then we can reward token to people for giving us the data that they've been researching, yada yada. So yeah, the last part of this residency, I'm gonna try to launch this on Juicebox, which is a crowdfunding platform. It's where Constitution DAO launched, and I actually just had a call with someone from Juicebox earlier today and told them about the Agartha virtual village plan. They absolutely loved the idea, and then said that they will offer support on launching this. So I remember Caroline mentioned there's got to be a Web3 element into this project. So that would be the Web3 element. We're going to try to launch this project and create a custom token and contribution cycle, a contribution mechanism into like what's the next step of this, and where can we turn this into. So the process of launching on Juicebox, I'm planning to do a live, and that will be probably one of the last sessions. And if people are interested in how to use this, I definitely recommend you to tune in. And that's pretty much it. I think we can end our session now, and unless if anyone has any questions. All right. I think, okay, I want to thank you for everyone that tuned in. I know it's like a lot of babbling from me. You're probably gonna get a lot of that in the next 3 weeks, but really appreciate everyone who tuned in and for the session. And feel free to message me, on Twitter or in Discord at Syntonica if you have any questions, or if you would like to participate in some of the projects that Agartha is working on. And I know we have another session coming up, so I think we can end this now. Is it good? Do I just leave studio?